The ability to speak might not make you intelligent, but we're going to try to prove otherwise. This is the Clashing Sabers podcast. I am one of your hosts, Brandon, and I am here with an amazing co-host today. She is half Jar Jar Binks and half R2D2. I'll let you figure out what that means. It's Amanda!
That might have me stewing for a little while, and we'll put that to the side for afterward to ponder.
Oh, yeah, you'll figure it out eventually. I don't know what it means. I was like, what are two characters that make me think of Amanda? And Jar Jar and
Well,
R2 in the best ways possible make me think of you. I don't
I am pretty clumsy, so you've got part of that.
know. Oh man, Amanda, how are you doing today? We finally have you back on. You usually are hanging out over on our Patreon, but you're here today
hmm
and super excited to have
Yeah, just hanging in there, surviving, working towards thriving,
you. Aren't
being
we
an adult.
always? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, very
Yep.
much so. One of these days we'll get it right, for sure. But who knows if it's going to
Someday.
be today?
Retirement.
What's that? I don't think I'm going to have that.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, anyways, we'll figure it out. Who knows? Maybe we'll be thriving by the end of this episode. It's going to be a fun conversation
Hey.
because we are continuing on with the new series that we're doing. That's going to be pretty much a year-long series. For those of you who joined us on our last episode where we talked about hope being a daily decision, you heard that I am writing a book called The Jedi Path 2, and we're doing a series on each of the chapters in the book to kind of pair with the book and prepare you for when it comes out. So on that note, I do have some less than fortunate news to deliver. I, of course, was writing this book with Ken Martin, who was on the last episode with Devore and I when we talked about hope. And unfortunately, Ken has passed away. He passed away last Thursday at the time of this recording, or I guess 2 Thursdays ago at the time of this recording. It was unexpected. I've checked in with his family, and they seem to be doing the best that they can. And I spoke with his wife and asked for permission to continue the journey and continue writing the book in his honor. And I'm going to be doing that. I'm actually going to be working with Mark, who's going to be doing the art for us, which is going to be really exciting there. So really unfortunate situation. I do know all proceeds for the book will be going towards something that will be given in memory of Ken and the great guy that he was. We're going to figure out exactly what that is and keep you guys posted as time goes on. Still gonna be writing the book, still gonna be getting it out for the holiday season, still gonna be continuing this series. But yeah, unfortunately, Ken Martin has passed on into the force. Sorry to have to deliver that news, and it's hard to know, what to do and what to talk about after that. But I think Ken would want Star Wars fans to keep talking Star Wars and keep his memory alive by living these things that we're going to talk about in the Jedi Path 2. It is still going to be. I'm still planning on putting his name on the book. And continuing, like I said, this as a part of the legacy that he left, because he started this adventure. He approached me about continuing to write, about joining on to write the Jedi Path 2. So it will be fully in honor of him, and I'm hard at work at that, and we're going to continue this series just as we intended to pair with those chapters. So I'm really thankful, Amanda, this time that you were able to join me and getting to do what Ken would have loved, which is hanging out with Star Wars fans, talking Star Wars.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So with that, one of the things we love to do on here is not just talk about these deep ideas like we're going to talk about today about being proactive over being reactionary, but we like to ask a really important question that kind of defines everything that we do here. And that is, what have you been Star Warsing lately? And Amanda, you and I talked a little bit beforehand, and we know we're Star Warsing one thing, and it's Maul Shadowlord and the new trailer that came out. So tell me how you're feeling about the new trailer for Maul Shadowlord, and has it made you more excited for this show, less excited? Are you the same? Where are you at with the show?
So first of all, they had like the trailer to the trailer.
Yeah, the teaser.
I actually really liked that. It was very artistic, and that got me pumped. I mean, it's kind of silly to have a trailer to a trailer, but they did it so well that I could forgive them for that. And then the trailer came out, watched it on my little bitty phone because I was at work, watched it, and then I meant to go home watch it again, didn't. But my coworker came to me the next day and was like, "Hey, did you see this?" I'm like, everybody comes and says, "Did you see this to me?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I saw that like 5 days ago," but that's okay. We don't. Yeah, I'm up on it. I promise. It's all over my socials. So we watched it on my big Promethean board at school. Turned out the lights before school started and
Nice.
watched the trailer on. My kids call it the TV. It's huge in the classroom, and it was just incredible. I love Star Wars animation. That's where my heart is. I get very irritated by people who look down on it. I'm like,
Yeah.
this is cool, but I wish it was live action. I'm like, but you don't understand what animation can do that live action cannot do.
Are people saying
Um,
that?
yes, yes.
Come on, people. Like, I get that Maul, started in live action and everything like that. But when you look at the total amount of time that Maul has been a live action character, it's 8 minutes
Right, right.
versus everything that we have in Clone Wars and Rebels. It's kind of silly to think that Maul is a live action character at this. Like, he is an animated character, and what Sam Witwer has done completely
Oh,
reinvented the
goodness.
character. You know what I mean?
Yep, yep. I guess the thinking is we've had animation, now we want to see it live action.
No.
Plus, people just look down. I don't call it cartoons for a reason. I don't use that word. I call
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah, yeah.
animation. So it's a medium that should be more respected. But oh
And
well,
I
those of
think
us who love
too,
it will love it.
right? Yeah, no, I agree. And I think too that this is an opportunity, since we're going in a very different direction than Clone Wars and Rebels. Like, Sam Witwer has talked about this and said, this is not a show where we're going to make the bad guy into a good guy and you're going to feel bad for him and everything. Like, this is a bad guy who is just not as bad as the bad guys who are the baddest guys in the galaxy, right? He's not a Sidious, he's not a Palpatine, but he is definitely still a bad guy and is going to stay a bad guy. So I don't think that we're going to be rooting for Maul necessarily as the show goes on.
Hmm.
We might be pulling for him, and I think that's different. Like, rooting for him, you want him to be successful. Pulling for somebody, you can pull for somebody to be successful because you want them because they're the lesser of the evils. You know what I mean?
Right,
And I think that's
right.
what we're going to be dealing with Maul, is like his actions are not necessarily going to be justified, but they're going to be understandable because of the situation that he's put in.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I'll be really interested to see this whole new, not whole new, but this whole he's finding an apprentice thing is not new. And so how are they going to make it different from Savage? How are they going to make it different from Ezra? Um, Maul is an interesting character because he's always looking for relationship. He's always looking for connection. He's always looking for belonging, which really isn't a Sith thing. Like, when
True.
you look at the Sith, like Palpatine, no, like Vader was pushing it away more than he was, trying to find it. Like, Luke found him and made that connection, not the other way around. It, you know, it's going to be really interesting to see how this connection plays out and the impact that it has on him. And I'm going to be really, I think it'll be really compelling if we get this story where he has the remnants of Savage and he's taken what he learned from training him, applies it to this new apprentice, and then somehow we see it change how he approaches Ezra in Rebels. Um,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
I want to see what I don't want to see, even though he's going to stay a bad guy. I don't want to see him the same at the end as he was at the beginning, which is the easy thing to do here. Is like, let's just have him, swing his lightsaber around, kill lots of people, do a bunch of bad things, take on these Inquisitors. Oh, we'll have him fight Vader at some point, hopefully on Malachor, and that's how he ends up staying there and
Right.
stuff like that. Vader thinks he's dead or something. We're gonna have all of this cool stuff, but I want to see character change. I want to see evolution, or even de-evolution for that matter, since we're
Mm-hmm.
talking about
Mm-hmm.
Maul. But just don't give me somebody who's static. That is the one thing that will really get on my nerves if we get that in this story.
I can't. I mean, it could always happen, but I just don't. I have faith in the people that are doing this to not go that route, to do it with a
Yeah.
purpose. So
Yeah,
we'll
I think
see.
there'll be a purpose. I think there'll be intention. They've made it very clear that this isn't like a Clone Wars or Rebels where there's multiple
Mm-hmm.
storylines going on. So this is
Mm-hmm.
going to be one storyline throughout. It's not going to be like, here's an episode of them going to get Jogan fruit because we need to build the relationship. It's going to be everything that, builds, and builds that suspense. So I'm looking forward to that aspect of it. I think that's going to be part of what makes this show really good, is that, we're going to kind of get left wondering at the end of every week about what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
have full faith in. I talked in the last episode about how, things have been hard for me with Filoni lately because I feel like he's been telling the same stories over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
This is one thing, because I know his fingerprints are going to be on it because it's animation, even though he's not directly involved with the show necessarily.
Right.
This is going to be one thing that could, in part, point me back in the direction of, okay, maybe we're getting past what I talked about last episode, which is like, or on Sith Talk recently rather, which is like he's got stuck in place. He's not doing anything wrong. He's just been stuck in place, and this could be something that points to, okay, it's under his creative direction now. This is animation, which always links back to him. Maybe this is something that's pointing in he is getting out of that habit, or at least putting people in place to help him get out of that habit, because I don't want to take credit
Yeah.
away from the people who are making this. But the thing that gives me the most confidence about this is Sam Witwer. I don't think Sam
Yes.
Witwer does this show if it's not going to be something that is really worthwhile for Maul. Sam is
Mm-hmm.
not somebody who necessarily like just does it because it's Star Wars. Like, he cares about this character, and so I want to see what he brings to the table with this.
I think that's incredibly true. Like, I hadn't thought of that, but yeah, Maul is kind of Filoni's Ahsoka. Just
Or Sam
how
Witwer's
Filoni feels.
Ahsoka.
I mean, sorry. Yes.
No, you're good.
I haven't been sleeping well. This is boding so well for today, doesn't it? Sorry. Thank you.
But yeah, no, I think so. I think this is one way or another. Sam Witwer's done other things in his career, obviously, but I think this has been the biggest thing that he's done. And so, like, I think in one way or another, this is going to define his legacy as an actor. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much time he spends thinking about that or any of that kind of stuff like that, but it does point towards, he is going to put everything that he has into this character. And we've seen what he's done with the character so far.
Right.
Like,
Right.
everything that he has, come up with. Like, for example, when we got Spider Maul, like, having him be reciting the Sith code, that was Sam Witwer. Like,
Mm-hmm.
Filoni just had
Mm-hmm.
that he was mumbling, and Witwer is the one that came up with all of that stuff. And I just
Mm-hmm.
find him to be, even when I disagree with him on stuff, like I disagree with him strongly on The Last Jedi, I find him to be very insightful. He doesn't just have reactionary takes. He's very thoughtful in everything that he believes about Star Wars and everything that he does with Star Wars. And so his involvement and how much he's out there in the press, pushing the show, gives me a lot of confidence. And we haven't had a lot of that in Star Wars lately, or Disney lately, because they just tend to throw things onto these streaming channels with no advertisements until after the fact.
It is
So
a problem. But
yeah,
still.
hopefully we'll push Maul Shadowlord, because like Maul is like, even if people don't know that Maul is alive, if they haven't watched the other shows or anything like that, like, Maul's name has weight. You put that out there, there's going to be curiosity. There's going to be intrigue about why this character is back, and I think it's going to bring eyes to the table. And I think that that's a good thing. I think that that will then get people going back to Clone Wars, get people going back to Rebels, wanting to learn more of his story, and then seeing how powerful those stories are. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's very short-sighted to me to think that in this connected galaxy that we have, that you're advertising for one thing. You're advertising for everything. right? Through the
Right.
one thing.
Right.
It's a little different than, like Marvel's new approach with the Spotlight series. Like Wonder Man, I'm loving it so far. Haven't finished it, but it's great so far.
I haven't watched it yet.
It's
It's been
so
a
good.
week,
It's
but
so
I've
good
heard
so far.
amazing things about it.
Like I
Mhm.
get, like they didn't really do a lot of great advertising for that. Like I didn't know about it until it was like
No.
late, right? But like that's not a doomsday thing where it's like it connects to everything else, and so
Right.
you're pushing everything out.
Right.
That's a spotlight. It's a little tiny segment of the galaxy of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that might not get people to go watch the other stuff. That's not the same with Star Wars. Andor gets you to go watch The Mandalorian. Mandalorian gets you to go watch Ahsoka. Ahsoka gets you to go watch Rebels. Rebels gets you to watch Clone Wars. Like, it's all so connected that you're gonna get. And you're a prime example of this. Mandalorian led you into Star Wars, right? So it's really short-sighted to not push the show. And so I'm hoping once we get to like March time, we start seeing a lot more advertisements for this, because I think it's going to be a really, really good show. And I'm glad glad we're not having to wait forever for it. April is going to be here sooner than you think.
It is. Time does that. So
Yeah.
it goes by fast.
What would you say you're most looking forward to as far as the show is concerned?
Oh goodness. Honestly, the artistry, I think. Just the painting on the screen that they make with animation. I'm really intrigued by the animation style of it all and how it looks.
The look is really good. The look is really good. Because like it's Clone Wars and Rebels. Like it fits in the same thing, but it's different. It's like
I'm about to start watching Rebels with my friend Isaiah tomorrow. He hasn't seen it yet. And I'm like, okay, you're gonna have to get past the animation. I've already had this like introductory thing for him. Like, Ezra's annoying. Remember, he's a teenager. The animation is different. Just go with it. I promise it's worth it. So.
Oh, but it is going to be. It was an adjustment with Rebels, right? And
It was.
For some reason, my gut just tells me like it's not going to be an adjustment for people, and maybe it's because with Maul in particular, because it could be that we haven't had Star Wars animation in a hot minute. If you don't keep up with like Young Jedi Knights, which you should be because that show is really good, or you didn't watch Resistance, which is understandable because that show is not very good. Just
I
kidding.
haven't seen that one yet. That's the blind spot.
People who like Resistance, I'm not dogging on it. Actually,
it's a short enough thing to watch. I just need to get to it.
Yeah, just wasn't my vibe. But like, it's not, that actually is a good point with a good angle with Resistance. Like Resistance was a really sharp turn for Star Wars animation because it was going in a completely different direction. And I think that really split people 50-50 on whether they wanted that or not. It still has that visual connection with what we've already seen, but it's more aggressive. It's grittier. It is. It is. If you look at like the live action angle of it, right? Like the cinematography. If you equate the cinematography of Mandalorian to like Clone Wars and Rebels, this is Andor. Right.
Right.
It's darker. It pushes the boundaries. It's got some realism to it in a weird way. Where
they're staying on the one planet. They're not planet hopping in this one.
That's true.
From what I've read, which is a departure from what we're used to, and I think that's fun and exciting.
Yeah, and possibly allows them to develop the style more. You know what I mean? Like not having to develop all these different cultures and stuff. And I know the planet they're starting on, I think it's like Junda or something like that.
Yeah, I cannot remember, but I've read it.
There's so many planets. But they're going to be able to develop that world and that culture and that, what all exists there more. And it exists outside of the Empire right now. Like the Empire hasn't taken control of it yet.
Right.
So you're going to get to see it. I imagine, first couple episodes we'll get kind of, what it's like there, and then we'll see it broken apart, which we kind of usually just see the breaking apart aspect of it, I think when you look at something like, this is going to be a wild like analogy, but when you look at something like the Gorman massacre, that impact, it's impactful because we spent time on Gorman, because we got to know its culture, because we got to know its people, not just as individuals, but as a society, right? And so if we learn what these people of this planet that Maul is going to be on are about, and we can connect with them on a human level, that Empire coming in, and maybe that's how they get us to root for Maul in a way, going back to our earlier thing, is, okay, I don't like how he's doing it, but he is protecting these people from these crime bosses. He is protecting these people from the Empire, and I know how bad that is. So, it's like, it's gonna be a really fine line for them to toe, and I'm really excited to see what happens.
I'll be there.
Yeah, right. Hopefully in theaters. Please release some of this in theaters. Please release all of it in theaters. I need Star Wars animation in theaters. It would be so great.
Not gonna happen.
Shut up. I know. I want it so.
It would be amazing.
Well, what is going to happen is we are going to move on. I think it's time to go ahead and jump into our topic. And for this series, this Jedi Path series that we're going on, we have 16 chapters that we're going to have in the book. And like I said, we're going to have an episode to go with each chapter. And we're not necessarily going to talk about what's in the chapter. We're not necessarily not going to talk about what's in the chapter. To be honest with you, the topic we're talking about today, proactive versus reactionary, I have not started writing that chapter yet. So, this conversation might end up influencing it a little bit. It might not. It's going to just expand the galaxy. This is the expanded universe of the book galaxy that I am writing. It's going to be a good conversation. Just going to kind of see where things go and have a discussion about, like, what is it about being proactive over being reactionary that defines the Jedi path. And when I was thinking about this, a lot of it for me centered around whether you're acting out of fear or you're acting out of discipline, and not necessarily structure, but consistency and reliability. And so for you, when you think about what it means to be proactive over being reactionary, what immediately comes to mind?
Proactive to me is logical and thoughtful, and reactionary is emotional and impulsive.
Yeah.
So those are the words that come to my mind.
Okay. And I think too, when we talk about being, emotional and impulsive, we're not talking usually about being, joyful and,
Yeah.
stuff. We're talking about that idea of acting out of anger, acting out of brashness, acting out of fear. And I think that, that is very much of the dark side. So I think being proactive is of the light, and being reactionary is very much of the dark. So are there any characters that come to mind that like kind of contrast each other in terms of somebody who's proactive and somebody who's reactionary?
You're going off my script.
I'm sorry, but like I said, I'm trying to develop what the chapter is going to be. I need some help here.
He gave me questions. This is not one of the questions.
We'll get to the questions. Come on now. You know me. I like to throw a curveball.
Okay. Let's see. Well, okay. Can I throw your first question back at you to answer this question?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so your first question was, what's the difference between feeling fear and letting fear make your decisions?
Mm-hmm.
And I actually thought of a single character who embodied both of those statements.
Okay.
And that's Kanan Jarrus.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So when we read about Kanan in A New Dawn, he is not in a good place. He has lived a life ruled by fear, running from the people who are hunting him and trying to survive Order 66. So he's been in this state of fear his entire life. And then he meets Hera. And then you see in Rebels, by the end, he ends up sacrificing his life for the people he loves by feeling the fear and then moving past it to accomplish something even greater. So that, to me, is the person who best embodies that statement.
I like that a lot. Yeah. I
Thank you.
think, life is a progression of, like, our instinct is to be reactionary, right? I think that that's a survival mechanism that's instilled in us because, you think back to like caveman psychology, right? It's all about like surviving and looking for threats, right? And that's what
Hmm.
reactionary, is. That's what fear is looking for those threats, right? And being proactive is recognizing those threats might not be what you think they are. Those threats might be something different, and it's taking the time to be thoughtful and considerate of them. And I think that's the journey that we see, Kanan go on, is that journey of discovering, okay, when am I really in danger,
Hmm.
and what do I want to do about it? And it goes to that quote from Yoda in Rebels. It's how Jedi choose to, and that defines Kanan.
Hmm.
Kanan went from being okay with losing and being a loser to being willing to sacrifice himself to give others the opportunity to win. And
Hmm.
if that's not an amazing arc, like that's about as much growth as you can possibly make, right? And we don't get a lot of time to
Hmm.
see that stuff in Star Wars, we
Right.
usually, because like the characters I immediately think of when I think of proactive and reactionary, I think of Qui-Gon as proactive, and I think of
Hmm.
Maul as reactionary, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so the Duel of the Fates is really about who's going. Filoni talked about it being for Anakin's soul and everything in that episode of the documentary in The Mandalorian. And I think that's true in this sense of being proactive versus being reactionary. Who is, you know, Anakin going to grow up modeling himself after? And what it ends up being is he grows up modeling himself after Obi-Wan, who is somebody who is actually on the journey as we see him. When you look at Obi-Wan in The Phantom Menace, he is very reactionary. He is,
Hmm.
very, very much like, I need to take action now. And Qui-Gon's the one trying to tell him, settle down, dude. Like, slow down, think about the situation. Like, look, yes, he says trust your instincts, but he doesn't say, you know, act solely out of your instincts. He wants Obi-Wan to be considerate. And we see Obi-Wan go on that journey and become more like Qui-Gon as time goes on. But I think because he struggled with it and struggled with how to do it, he didn't necessarily know how to convey it to Anakin, who is a very reactionary person and struggles with that to a tremendous degree. And it obviously is
He's
part of what leads to his fall.
the
So
archetype of it, really.
it really is, it's like, I think the most interesting journeys are the ones where people go from being reactionary to being proactive. And when we're looking at tragedy stories, it's that failure to be able to do that, right? Because reaction is out of fear, like almost
Hmm.
all the time. You might get lucky and not get a bad result out of it here and there, but it's an action out of fear. So what do you think is the difference between feeling fear and letting fear make the decisions for you? Because I think we confuse a lot in life that like these feelings go away once you train yourself, right? Once you do the
Hmm.
work, somehow you stop feeling these fear things. But that's just not the case. So what's the difference between just having that feeling and doing like Anakin does of letting those feelings make the decision for
I think it's going to be a little bit hard to pull specifics out at this point, but I think the High Republic did a good job
you?
of showing that and how was it Wreath? Yes. Wreath who
Yes.
went through the journey of he was one of my top favorite characters because at the very beginning he is me. Like, I don't want to
Yeah.
leave the library. Don't take
Just
me out of the
stay in and read
library.
books.
I'm scared of everything. I'm not saying he was scared of everything, but he was a nervous. He had his fears. He really did.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why he stayed in the library. And I also tend to be a little bit fearful of life and change and choices and things like that. So to watch Wreath go from the kid who didn't want to leave the library to where he was in Trials of the Jedi is just this huge journey of these feelings are natural and you can't say that they don't exist. And to say that they don't exist is to deny your humanity. And that's really not what the Jedi are trying to teach. It is control and mastery of those feelings for the greater good. And so, kind of,
Well, I like something you said
yeah.
there while you're gathering things. You said it's control with those feelings instead of controlling those feelings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference between, I think, the Jedi of the High Republic and the Jedi of the prequels. Is the Jedi of the prequels are trying to control the existence of those feelings, whereas the Jedi of the High Republic are trying to have control over how they respond to those feelings, right? Trying
Mm-hmm.
to master that reactionary instinct that exists,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I look at a character like Iskat from Rise of the Red Blade, and her reaction, her instinct is to kill. She finds that like she is best at that, but she also knows she doesn't want to do that. She knows she doesn't want to be that person, but because she's not, the Jedi are training you that these instincts that you have are just purely wrong, and not that they
Mm-hmm.
are just what
Mm-hmm.
exists, right? Now, is killing and murdering to the degree that Iskat was doing not a good thing? Yes, right. That's not the argument
Right.
that we're having, right? What I'm saying
Right.
is those instincts exist, and the Jedi were not, in the prequels, were not teaching how to deal with them. They were teaching how to get rid of them. And when you look at somebody like Reith, nobody judged him for wanting to stay in the library. They just knew that that wasn't the best place for him to fully
He's not going to
become
grow
who
and
he needed
develop
to be.
there. Yeah.
Exactly. So the Jedi that pulled him out of there are the ones who really were helping him develop that sense of being proactive, of realizing you're going to get stuck in place, and providing that opportunity for him to go out and expand his horizons, and eventually, like, he becomes the one who saves the galaxy. And I think that, that's something that like Elzar struggles with too, is he struggles, in the same way that Iskat does, with just like those dark instincts. And it's Avar who starts to help him see that, like, dude, you're judging yourself for things that you have no control over, right? We have no control over our feelings, right? You don't decide what your feelings are. You decide what you do about your feelings.
Right.
And that's the
Right.
big difference that I think the Jedi of the prequels, and even people in our own society, sometimes lose sight of. We label these emotions as good or bad, when it's the actions you take out of them that are what's actually good or bad, right? Anger is
Mm-hmm.
not anything at all. It's just a signal. It's just a chemical reaction, right? Punching someone out of anger is what is wrong, but the anger is the thing that gets labeled as wrong. Why did you get angry? Why did you, right? And in that sense, it's the reactionariness that is wrong, right? And the proactiveness is recognizing that acting out of that is wrong. It's not that instinct disappearing, right? And so when you look at Elzar, that instinct doesn't disappear. He just changes how he decides to act out of it. So spoilers if you haven't finished Trials of the Jedi, but it's embracing the darkness within him and utilizing that for good that actually helps end the nameless, the struggle with the nameless. And it's so interesting too, and I just find it so compelling that it's through Avar that he figures this out, because it's through love, it's through compassion, it's through somebody who, when we meet her, is at a place of proactiveness already, that is able to help him get to that point.
What I was thinking too, but even before you brought all that up, before you said Elzar's name, I was thinking of another form of reaction is lust and selfishness. And you could say that Anakin and Padme had that especially on the Anakin side of things, had that lustful relationship, that desire to own and possess, whereas Elzar and Avar, they're loved again, just it's a theme for me, I guess, but helped them sacrifice. They were selfless through their love,
Mhm.
whereas Anakin, through his reactions, became selfish
Yeah.
through his love.
Yeah. Yeah. And is there, like, within that, whether it's Anakin and Padme or Elzar and Avar or somebody else, is there like a moment when that idea of reacting out of instinct too quickly made things like worse for characters? Like, we see it obviously with Anakin, so let's go ahead and push him aside, right? That's like
Yes, right.
the
I actually have
he's
no notes about Anakin.
it's almost too
I,
easy, right? This whole
it
episode could
was.
just be an Anakin, exploration, right? It could even
Yes,
be like
yes.
just us, looking at the Skywalkers, because the Skywalkers, except for like, we could be contrasting. Honestly, we could be contrasting the boys and the girls, because like the boys Skywalkers are usually pretty reactionary, and the girl Skywalkers usually are a little bit more proactive. But other than that, like, where is an instance where that made things worse for a character, and what could they have done like instead to make a better choice?
Okay, I have one for you on that. I was trying to dig a little deeper, so um, I thought of Sabine and Ahsoka when she gives the map to Thrawn to Balin to save Ezra and ends up threatening the entire galaxy through her actions.
Interesting. I would
Now,
not have
we don't
gone
know
there.
how that
Yeah.
story will end, so I also believe that bad things can be turned into things for the greater good, that all things can be made beautiful and good. So we
Hmm.
don't know the end of their story yet. But as far as just that moment in time, when you watch it, it's very impulsive. It's also a selfish decision. She wants to save Ezra, who, for all intents and purposes, sacrificed his life, and it was his choice to do that. And now she is trying to go get him back. And even I wouldn't go again, we don't know the end, but it could be that she is demeaning his sacrifice. That's not the word I want, but devaluing that
Devaluing
sacrifice
it.
that
Yeah,
he
I think that's
made.
a good word. Yeah.
So, mhm.
That's interesting. See, I would almost argue that a little differently. I would say that Sabine thinks she's being proactive. She is making the necessary sacrifices the way that she sees it, right? Um, because there's that moment she's like reaching out, and really, like, her reaction is, yeah, give it to him. But I think she sees it, and this is something we'll get into in the chapter about perception creating reality.
Mm,
She thinks she is doing the right thing. She thinks she's being proactive. I'm going to get Ezra back, and Ezra is the hope for the galaxy. He's the hope for the Jedi, right? We don't know that she knows about Luke. We don't know, at least, like,
right.
not the man necessarily. She might know the legend, but we don't know if Ahsoka, the timeline. We don't know if Ahsoka's met Luke at this point and has told her about it and stuff. So I think she thinks
It's
she's being
interesting.
proactive there.
And I
But
read it more as I want Ezra back because I want him back, not because the galaxy needs him back. But I'd have to rewatch it and see. It's been a while. So that's a really interesting thing.
yeah, I think we just need to rewatch Ahsoka. I think that's the
I
point here.
darn,
Dadgummit. Yeah, because I
life
think
is hard.
so. That's an interesting idea. I think to pause on, though. Like, I think, we look at these things as like a dichotomy, and we've talked about them as a dichotomy, right? Reactionary,
Hmm.
bad;
Hmm.
proactive, good. Can being proactive actually be bad sometimes?
Oh, yes.
Do,
Yes, you can get into analysis paralysis and get nothing done.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I
It
think
is,
so.
it can absolutely be, you need both. You have I did some research, but you have your parasympathetic nervous system, you have
Mm-hmm.
your sympathetic nervous system. They're supposed to be in balance with each other. And when they're not in balance, that's when things get screwy. So the parasympathetic is the proactive and the sympathetic is the reactive. And they
Mm-hmm.
have to work in tandem. What do you know? balance. It's never the answer to anything at all.
Right?
So if you have all of your sympathetic in control, I have lots of notes about it, but it does horrible things to your body and your thinking and things. But if you only have the parasympathetic, you're never going to get anything done. Stress and reaction is not all a bad thing on its own. It propels us to change, propels us to do things.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how again, like feelings, it's how we use that matters.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of like, I think the Jedi would be like, if you have emotions, that are overwhelming, you meditate or whatever, right? And
Mm-hmm.
of course, meditation exists in our world, but like, I immediately think of like my experience and like, if you're having a bad reaction to something, like what is proactive, it's going to therapy, right?
Right. Right.
To find that balance of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic or whatever, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
for some people it's going to the gym, for some, whatever it is, some people it's meditating. I think part of the Jedi path is figuring out how you find the balance between the two. Because it's interesting. I was just watching on my best talk about George Lucas and how George Lucas got kind of frustrated with everybody misunderstanding balance, because the light
Mm-hmm.
side is balanced. The dark side is not. The balance is not having an equal amount of the two, right? The balance acknowledges that the dark exists, right? But it is being in the light that is balanced. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that is kind of something you're getting at there, where it's like the sympathetic is the reactionary one, right? Just before I mess this
Yes.
up. Okay.
Yes.
So like
I know, I have to stop and think.
yeah. The sympathetic, it's going to exist regardless, right? But
Mm-hmm.
the balance is existing in that parasympathetic mind state of
Mm-hmm.
being able to objectively see it. And I don't think that's always very exciting. You know what I mean?
No.
And
No,
so,
it's not.
right.
No.
And so I think being proactive can make things look less dramatic than being reactionary, right? And also a lot of times too, like people give you, if you react correctly, people give you a lot more credit for reacting correctly, like quickly. They're like, oh, they handle stuff, whatever, than being proactive, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
when you think about it and when you look at it from that angle, like, does it end up being more powerful to be reactionary or to be proactive? And or does it depend on if you're right?
I think we'll say it's situational.
Okay.
Because there are times when you do need to be reactionary. But for the most part, I think I'm a very logical person. That's kind of typically the headspace I live in.
Yeah, same.
So proactive is kind of my jam. And I do believe I benefit a lot from it. I have I had those reactive emotional moments. And then once that's let out, I can usually calm myself down and think through things a little more clearly. And it's when I think through those things clearly that's when things get done, or I restore my mental health, or I don't know. Does that make any sense there?
that balance comes back almost.
Right.
It's in those
Right.
moments that you find that. So in Star Wars, like what characters make you think of that, like that they plan for the future instead of like trying to control outcomes,
Mm-hmm.
and like in that show us how to respond.
Oh, this is one where I did pull a more obvious character. For me, it's the later, older Kenobi,
Mm-hmm.
where the part where he's watching over Luke from afar, knowing as much as he loves this child, he needs to keep his distance, but also protect him. But then the ultimate example is fighting Vader on the Death Star. He plans for that eventuality. It's a fight he could have won, potentially, but he deliberately chose to lose, so to speak, that battle to gain greater reward in that loss. By making the choice that he did, he could then be a presence in Luke's life no matter where he was. He could guide and teach from afar in a way that he couldn't as a physical presence. And so I feel like he really, in that time and solitude, I believe on Tatooine, he grew up a lot. He thought about this
Yeah.
future a lot. And I mean, he had nothing to do but think in many respects. And he made that plan. And he knew that, I think on some level, he knew that that could very well be his end. He also had the training with Qui-Gon. You know, he went through mentorship and guidance and got himself to a place where he could make that plan for the greater good in the end.
I think that's a really good point. I think too, like if you look at who he is in the Kenobi series, you see
Mm-hmm.
more of a reactionary person, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of like when you fall on hard times, a lot of times you go purely to survival instinct, which is very reactionary, right? And so when Bale approaches him, is like, yo, Leia's in trouble, like you need to help. His reaction is no. His reaction
Mm-hmm.
is like, that's not what I was the role that I was given, right?
Right.
Whereas being proactive is him realizing, oh no, I actually have a bigger purpose than Luke the person. I have the purpose of what Luke and Leia are going to provide, which is hope for the galaxy again, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember the exact words, but in that message that he sends out in Revenge of the Sith that we see in Rebels, like he says, it's funny because of course it's the title of the film, but he says a new hope will emerge. I think is the exact words, and he's kind of lost that a little bit. And then you get
Right.
to what you were talking about on the Death Star, and call it a retcon or whatever you want, kind of thing. But that look that he gives, in 1977, that was a look at Luke and like Luke's ready for this, like he's in his place or whatever. When you look at it in 2026, it's like, oh, Luke and Leia are together now. They can
Mm-hmm.
handle this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's him being proactive, kind of like, not kind of like exactly like you talked about, where he sees that there is a higher purpose. He sees that he's going to be able to help more, not in a physical sense, because him physically being there is going to limit them because they're going to become
Right.
dependent on him, right? And he saw that. He saw Anakin become dependent on him. And when he was separated from Anakin, like that was Palpatine's like master plan, was really
Mm-hmm.
isolating Anakin and both mentally, emotionally, and physically separating him from Obi-Wan, right? Like if Obi-Wan's
Right.
on Coruscant when all that stuff is going down, Anakin doesn't fall to the dark side,
Right.
because
Right.
Obi-Wan was the one that was able to pull him out. So there's almost a sense in being proactive and versus reactionary, and like finding that balance in between the two, like of figuring out your identity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Figuring out
Mm-hmm.
who you are. I was talking with Zach a while ago, off air, and we were just talking about some, deep stuff. Him and I tend to have pretty deep conversations. And he sent me a message and he said, like, dude, I hate hearing you say that, like, you feel bad about your emotions, because all it is you just feel big feelings, right? And it's not that those
Mm-hmm.
big feelings are bad, right? But there's almost this sense in being a person, right? That if anything is too much one way or too much the other way, like it's wrong, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, is there something about our identity and this idea of who we are that shapes us into being either proactive or reactionary? Or on the flip side, is it our decision to be proactive or reactionary that shapes who we are? So, like, which direction
For
do you think it flows?
for me, I believe a lot of this is a hard one for me because I
It,
am riddled with insecurities. My sense of self is honestly not very strong. It's something that I'm working towards. I have some professionals on my side now to help with that, and some understanding of why I am that way has come in adulthood. Um, and so it's really hard for me to understand where that sense of identity comes from and how to develop it in a healthy way. I would, as far as Star Wars goes, I would look towards Ahsoka for that one.
as
And
you always should.
as you should. Just how she knew who she was when she left the order. And I can tell you that if it was me in that position, I wouldn't have left because I would not have known who I was or have faith in the person I could be without the structure and the training and the teaching and the missions that I had had my entire life. She really stepped into the unknown because she knew who she was. At least she was starting to. I don't believe she was fully there yet at that point, but she took a step in that direction of knowing that this was no longer the place for her. And you talk about not letting fear control your decisions. I can't imagine how scary it would be to leave the only home you've ever known, the only family you've ever known, and go into something just completely almost anchorless. She is going to have to figure it out by herself for the first time ever. And you can't do that without a sense of self. Well, you can't do it well.
Yeah. I think you're onto something there. I would argue that it's not that she knows who she is. I think it's that she knows who she's not. And so
Sure.
I think like that's a really fine like line to kind of like slice. But
right.
because like I think you're born with your this identity, right, of some sort, right, that is
Yes.
developed and evolved through your trauma, through your personality,
I
like
was
your
going to say experiences
that they end up shaping who that becomes, right? And the moment that you start to decide, I'm not going to let these experiences decide who I am, I'm going to let me decide who I am, is when you go from being reactionary to being proactive, right? And so, like, I think that's the journey that Ahsoka goes on when she walks away from the Order, is she starts to say, I'm not going to let these experiences define me anymore. I'm going to define me, right? And then she goes to figure out what the hell that means through everything else, right? So she goes to the Martez, she meets the Martez sisters, and I always go back to how important they are.
I don't like that arc.
I love it so much because
the younger one drives me nuts. Anyway.
Yeah. Well, but I think it goes like the importance of it is that line.
I know it's important.
You are who the Jedi should be, or you're what I think a Jedi should be, or however Rafa says it to her. And that's what sparks things for Ahsoka to become, who she is in Rebels. And I think it's important too to note, like, once you figure it out, doesn't mean you figured it out. Like, she goes backwards, after she fails with Sabine, she goes back to being reactionary. The whole crossed arms thing, like that Drew gets on. It's symbolic, as she's closed off. She has become a reactionary in the same way that Obi-Wan became reactionary in, I'm going to shelter in, I'm going to hide myself in my pain, instead of who she was in that moment that you brought up of her walking away from the Jedi Order, of, I'm going to open myself up to anything that can happen and have faith that I can handle it. And she proves that she can. So I think it's an important part of the Jedi path to understand that it's all an ebb and flow, right? You're going to have times when you end up being reactionary. You're going to have times when you end up being proactive. I think the important thing is to make sure that you're listening, right? Listening to the Force, listening to others, listening to yourself. It goes back to Qui-Gon's feel, don't think, trust your instincts, right? That's listening, right? Is don't overthink it. Listen, right? And what I forget his name, but it's the Jedi Master that helps Ahsoka when she loses her lightsaber.
Goodness, I don't know the name either.
And he
had a cane lightsaber. That's what I remember.
Yes, and he says, you need to be quiet. And Ahsoka says, okay. She stops talking. And then he says, not quiet with your mouth, quiet with your mind. So what role does that play? Does that ability to be quiet and just listen play in being proactive about our choices? And on that side, like, are there examples of it in Star Wars that kind of come to mind?
So you're hitting all of my weaknesses here. It's funny because my particular brand of ADHD loves noise. I
Mm,
constantly am listening to something. If I don't have something going on in my ears, I get very antsy, very uncomfortable. I'm not comfortable with silence. At the same time, I truly believe, like a foundational belief, is that you need the quiet in order to hear. And so I need to start meditating actually. And I've said that for years and years. But if you, I mean, you need, yeah, you need the quiet to be able to hear your instincts. If you're spiritually, the voice that speaks to you to tell you what you need to do in life, um, the choices that you make and guidance in those. I was so mad at myself at work the other day. I had a student we couldn't find. I teach deaf and hard of hearing students, and a student lose her cochlear implant. Well, she didn't lose it, but we couldn't find her cochlear implant. We looked all over the playground. We looked all over my classroom. We looked in the cafeteria. We looked in the library. We combed the entire school. Before we even left the classroom to go to the playground, which was our first stop, I thought, I need to check her backpack. And then I immediately dismissed the thought of, it's never in her backpack. She always brings it to us if there's a problem. Why would it be in her backpack? That's impossible. That is where we found it. And I don't feel like I take the time to listen to myself enough to trust my instincts, or in Star Wars, you could say the Force. And that's really, you have to train yourself. That's not necessarily something that comes naturally. You have to learn to have confidence in those feelings. And so it was a real, hopefully it's a lesson that sticks, but probably not. And most people have to learn this. As human beings, we learn the same lesson over and over again, right? But
yeah,
hopefully I'll remember that moment and just be calm, be quiet, listen, and have faith that you are hearing what you need to hear.
yeah. And like, I think that's what makes Ahsoka such a special, interesting character, is we see her do that both well and poorly, depending on the story
Mm-hmm.
that you're looking at, right? And that push and pull between those two things of being able to be quiet and listen, and also realizing that, like, you both have the answers, right? And you don't have the answers.
Right, right.
Like, I think a lot about like her not training Grogu, but then being okay with Luke doing it. And I think that's the key point there, is she understands that she's not the one to train him because of her trauma and her experiences, but she's not saying that he shouldn't be trained at all, right? Um, and so that's why she's there when Luke is training, right? Is training Grogu. It's not that she thinks that Grogu is going to turn to the dark side or whatever. Like, she says, I've seen what this can do to the best of us, right? She has too much experience that she's not going to be able to be proactive in training Grogu, right?
Mm-hmm,
Because she
mm-hmm.
knows she's not going to be able to hear through the noise there, right? And it's that hearing through the noise that really allows us to be proactive, right? And it's that quiet with your mind, right? It's like, I think about that a lot. Like, I get up really early and go to the gym, right? And like, I always have music on. And sometimes I'm really listening to the music, and sometimes the music is just shutting everything else off so that I
Mm-hmm.
can
Mm-hmm.
really connect with myself today, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like today was one of those days. Like, I was having a lot of big feelings and everything like that, and trying to figure out why. And I put on music, and I was able to just shut everything off, right? I was able to shut out the noise. And it's that Qui-Gon meditating in the middle of the fight kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's that being able to find peace in the chaos kind of thing that makes the difference between being reactionary and being proactive. Because one is not the absence of the other, one is the understanding of the other, right? Being
Right,
proactive is the understanding of why you want to react, and if that reaction that you want to make is the right choice.
right. I think it's interesting that you brought up Grogu for this particular topic because I had him as part of my answer to this question as well. And I had chosen the Mandalorian giving Grogu to Luke
Mm,
as, or Din, listening to maybe others, but I think mostly himself, um, he came to love Grogu. They, lost Cub, found each other. They found family. They are family. And he gave up his family for a greater good, but he listened to the fact that he felt that somebody else could train him better. Things evolved from there, but
yeah.
it was a very
AKA
quiet
Disney
moment.
wanted money, but yes.
Yeah, right. Interesting stuff there, but yeah, it was a very quiet moment in an action show, in a louder show of that parting and that thoughtfulness and that decision making.
When I think that's an important point too. I'm really glad you brought that up because that moment shows, like, I think we think of being reactionary as like doing it right away and being proactive as you take a lot of time to think about it. It's really, you know, reacting versus being intentional, right?
Yes.
And when
Hmm.
Mando takes his helmet off, right? He doesn't have a lot of time to think about that. And we get
Mm-mm.
no implications that he's thought about it before, right? He just sees
Right.
Grogu reaching for him and decides that that's the right choice for him, right? But he checks
Right.
in, I'm sure, with, his values, with his instincts, with his love for, this kid, and decides that that's the right choice for him, right? And that he's willing to deal with the consequences, whatever they may be. And we see that as he continues, right? Is he goes
Hmm.
and he says, like, he I'd have to go back and watch season 3, in more detail, but I don't think we ever get him saying like I made the wrong choice, right?
I don't think so.
Right.
I
And
think he felt the need to, I don't even want to say atone, but
no, he definitely had to atone, but I don't think he was
yeah, okay.
atoning out of
Like as for a sin, it wasn't for a sin committed. That's what
no.
I'm struggling with. Like we tend
Yeah.
to, at least I do in religious context, connect atonement to sin and overcoming sin. And it wasn't a sin. It was just something that was out of line with what his clan believed in.
Right.
But it
It was
wasn't
stepping
a
out of
sin.
something. Yeah, he stepped out of something that he then wanted to step back into, right?
Yes, there you go.
Um
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
and I think that that's okay. That's something that
Right.
happens in life. And so in that, he's willing to accept the consequences of his actions, and
Yeah.
he's willing to put the work in
Hmm.
to deal with them in season 3. And so I just hope people know, like, you can be proactive without spending, weeks thinking about something in a decision. There are
Hmm.
times you need to do that, right?
Right.
But there are times when you have to just trust the force. And it's really going back to what you were saying earlier about understanding the sympathetic and the parasympathetic and making sure that you are aware which one is speaking to you in that moment. And that's what
Hmm.
really makes this. So, any other final thoughts, things you wanted to bring up that like you think are really important to this conversation before we wrap up?
We hit all of my highlights. So, I mean, I have plenty of notes, but I think we had a very thorough, in depth discussion as it is
Yeah.
and productive. Very interesting to me. I love brain science and I love like therapy type things and
Yeah.
self help. I don't really read self help, but I love talking about this kind of stuff with my sister all the time. I find it very beneficial, very
Yeah.
enlightening, and it helps me understand myself better.
And hopefully that's what people listening and watching on YouTube get out of this is like, look, this is not two experts talking on this. This is two people who have been through it. This is two people who love Star Wars and trying to make that connection between the thing that we love that was created by George Lucas to be a life lesson and taking those life lessons and applying them. So um, that being proactive is really about that intentionality, like we said, right? And I think that's what we're doing here is trying to be intentional about taking these lessons that George Lucas taught us, that Filoni has taught us, that all these creators, that have now contributed to Star Wars, have added to the lexicon and to the mythos, and making our lives better because of it. So if you guys have thoughts that you want to share on being proactive or reactionary, share your story about how you evolved through that, Star Wars characters or situations or moments that stood out to you that we maybe didn't cover, anything like that, you can always connect with us through email at clashingsabersnetwork@gmail.com, or over on our socials. TikTok and Instagram is where we are most of the time. And you can message us on there, comment on this post if you're watching this on one of those platforms, and we'd love to continue this conversation. Like I said, like, this is not a replacement for the book that will be coming out this holiday season. This is a supplement to it, right? This is something to add to the conversation, which is really what the book is about, is creating a conversation around these Star Wars characters, these Star Wars moments, these Star Wars parallels to what we deal with in everyday life. So I hope you guys will continue going on with us in the series, making sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening or watching now. Hit that button, give us a rating and review so that more people can find this, and hopefully find some people they can have conversations with about these topics. Amanda, if people want to find you, tell them where they can find you, and also a little bit more about what we do at Clashing Sabers and what you contribute to a lot through Patreon.
Well, socially, I'm under a rock. I am just trying to. It really,
Sometimes it's better. Sometimes that's being proactive, is hiding
it is
under
survival right now. Just like for so many, it's kind of a tough moment with a light at the end of the tunnel. So I'm just putting my head down and focusing on what's in front of me at the moment. But with that, I will be editing either today or tomorrow another podcast episode for the Patreon. Sarah and I are slowly going through Andor because she had not watched it before this summer.
Show so much.
So, and actually, I joke on the podcast episodes about how we're just so timely, with our Andor discussion. It's really topical right now.
Joke.
But then it actually turned out to be topical with award season. So, we brought it back.
You are the reason that it's in the award chatter,
There we go. That's why. So yeah, I'm on the Patreon side of things. I have my co-host Sarah and sometimes some other fun people with me, and we just try to chat about things that might not be the norm and or accepted, but just try to have fun for the most part with different things that we're doing. And I'm also going to be joining another podcast, War with the Stars, for a monthly book talk. I'm part of their roundtable. So I'll be doing that as well.
And everything that we get on our Patreon, of course, goes to our you're good. Goes to our nonprofit efforts to put Star Wars books into classrooms. Amanda and I actually met through one of those boxes and then became friends, and of course that led to her joining Clashing Sabers. But these books have a huge impact on kids and continue these stories and help kids learn these lessons that we're talking about. And so if you can contribute over there, 100% of the money that we get goes to that mission and that mission alone. And so, it's tax deductible, which is always a good thing, especially as we get to tax season and everything like that. If you want to make a large contribution or anything like that. But we are always very open about, we give all of this money back. We don't buy new equipment. We don't pay for the platforms. We don't do any of that. It's all to get Star Wars books into the hands of kids. And if you know anything about what's happening in schools right now, they are doing every damn thing they can to take books away from kids. So we're gonna give books to kids for free. And so you can help that by going to patreon.com/clashing-sabers, or more importantly than that, helping us find teachers to give to, because that's really the getting the funds part. Star Wars fans are always willing to contribute, right? I think there's almost too much of a selflessness sometimes where they don't want to share, right? We haven't been able to send out a book. I'll be honest with you. We haven't been able to send out a book box in far too long because we're waiting on a teacher to be nominated. So whether you are a teacher, a teacher, or you can find a teacher, heck, just go to your closest school and ask them who the teacher of the year was and you'd like to give them a gift, and we'll send them a box of books. Tell them who the least liked teacher on campus is. We'll send them a box of books. It doesn't matter. We want to send them books. So go to Patreon, or excuse me, go to
So it's not for the
ClashingSabers.net.
teacher, it's for the kids.
Exactly.
So...
Go to ClashingSabers.net /nominated teacher. Again, the link will be in the show notes for that. I do think, Amanda, we forgot one important point. Yeah.
I forgot to prepare for this. I forget it every time.
Well, you should
And
have
I'm
been ready
convinced I'm
for
going
me
to
to
say it
say.
wrong.
Well,
So you got to
you
say
should have
it
been ready.
first.
Okay. Batch 8.
I don't know.
Hi ho.
It's like
It's
hi
hi
ho
ho.
or something.
Yes.
Okay, I always think of dwarves.
Well, yeah, that's
Elves.
part of the fun.
Okay, remember, insecurities. I feel like I'm wrong all the time.
All right. Well, I'm telling you, you're right on this one. You're right. You got it.
Need to have faith in myself.